We've kind of told Orville that he's got about 15 minutes, so Orville, that's,
Okay, well,
yeah.
Well, the first thing I will say was thank everybody for what we had here today. Food, loyalty, and friendship. But the first thing that hit me on war was in the Legion magazine. It come out, the foils of World War III was spoiled. Well, I didn't know what they had to plan the wars ahead of time. Anyway, they had their powwow, and why did they have to spoil it? Not enough money. What is war? Money? Then the next one went along was, they always said that Hitler was the brains of the World War II, Germany. Well, you know one man couldn't run the whole show, but Nazi deal was ahead of all that, and they had their little deals, and so they got their head, they was going to make a Superman. So they took X number of women and X number of men, and they made them. What did they get? A bunch of Muslims. Well, that didn't prove out, so things went on, and now they've, I don't know whether you call this World War III or IV we're in, but anyway, we're in a mess.
Yep.
And there's, you and I can't do it, but everybody could do it. So that's about all I can tell you about that. Then she wanted to know about the Rhine River crossing. Now, that was quite a sight. There's probably 5,000-10,000 come down out of the hills all at once. We formed, and when we crossed the Rhine River, it was at middle of the afternoon, about April the 22nd or 24th. It seems like my calendar don't agree with theirs, but that's still all right. So we crossed the river, vehicles in the center, in a row of marching men on each side. Fine. We got to the other side, pretty soon they had no place to go. So we had to go ahead and make another river crossing to get rid of crossing the Rhine. Now, all I know, when we crossed the whole time, there was little bombs dropping in. Well, that was to blow a hole in the deals that carry the bridge.
Pontoon?
Yeah, and the slow leak. That slow leak kept things rolling. We got across. They'd run us in the field. They had to get us out of there right quick because we had to go across another river. But as far as the river crossings are concerned, and as far as if they take the money out of the thing, our war would be a very different deal. But why? You got too many British people. I'm one of them probably, but it's still all right. Now, if you don't agree with me, I'm thankful. And if you agree with me, I'm still thankful. But I do know that if you and I walked down the street, seen the same accident, we'd both have a different version.
Sure.
That's why we got people. Thank you very much.
What,
service, what branch and stuff?
we'd like to know what branch of service you were in, what your
Oh.
rank.
I was in 358th Infantry. I was a radio operator in that's 358th 90th Infantry Division. Now that's composed of approximately 18 to 20,000. Now it all depends on what you had put into your division, this or that. But anyway, that was our schedule. We only had 3,480, that ain't right. Anyway, that many kills. But we had over 25,000 treated at all medics. That tells you the curse of war. This killing, those people, they don't worry about nothing. But the ones that are left, they're the ones that shock you. And there's been, you've seen veterans that wasn't their fault, but I'll tell you, you could see the price of war. The price of war is not bought cheap. Wouldn't be for the people that are left, it had been over with. I said enough.
You've got time left. What about your landing?
Landing, yeah.
Yeah, the landing on the beach at Anzio?
Oh, we landed at Utah Beach. Now, we was, the first place, I was in the hospital in England for 2 days and 2 nights. The answer was stupidity. But anyway, I was half doped up, two double dose sulfapenicillin twice a day. And I got through with that. We went up to, finally one day they called me to the orderly room and I was issued a Jeep. Out of the blue sky, didn't tell me what to do. So the next day I had to go up to motor pool and they not winterized it, but water sort of wouldn't leak in. And so we got there. Then we had to sleep on the deck of the Liberty ship that night. And a lieutenant was there and he felt sorry for me. So I slept on a lieutenant's mattress that night. And I slept like a baby. And so finally the next day we got started out. We had to wait 2 days. And that harbor, of course, you talk about a harbor, that ain't a block long, it's miles long. And of course they all formed and we see them bombing the share across the harbor. The Navy'd all go in, boom, boom, boom. Things was pretty well blown up at that time. Anybody got there. But anyway, there's 16 Jeeps and a 3/4 ton on this landing craft. And of course they had to give us our drinks, and so drank rum is what theirs was. That is rotten stuff. That is worse than medicine. But anyway, everything was ready. You only had 2 inches clearance between vehicles. That's the way everything was. The leader was number 1. I was number 2. The orders was put your foot feet to the floor, dual raise both ends, and drive like hell. Water gets out to your knees, keep it going. But when it gets up to your neck, you make the decision. But anyway, we landed there, and they had a little grader. It is a yellow cat, small. They dug a furrow. One by one, that's the dog tag was put on the piece of wood. That's the way they went. Every body was to go into a mattress cover, but they run out of mattress covers the first day. So that helps tell you the story too. That's enough.
What year was?
44.
44?
How long were you in
How
service?
far? It was 44 when you landed?
Yes,
Yeah, but what year did you go into
Ah.
the service?
see, we landed well in England the 8th day of April 1944, and that's when we landed in England, Easter Sunday, the 8th day of 44. And of course, you hear about the beautiful sights in England. Yeah, we see the beautiful sights where the buzz bombs come in
Yeah.
and drop their sewer. That gook, there was two sides, liquid and solids. That was hauled out in 50-gallon or containers, and no more of that. All right, why we wound up at the north end of the England, I do not know. But here we got up to a ranch. The one side of the fence, of course, is fenced off, so I walked in there. McCormick, Deering Minor, that's what we had. But they took those packers, or kickers they call them, and they polished them. They had a grease gun fitting there. So when I got home, I tried that, but that didn't last long. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's just go around the table. John, are you good to go next? John's not eating, so if you leave your food there, well, he might nibble before he goes.
My name is John Grubbs. I joined the U.S. Army in 1990. I did 2 years, and I've been in the National Guard ever since January of '93. I'm a veteran of Desert Storm, Desert Shield, as well as Iraqi Freedom 2. I went with the Marysville Unit to 130th. And recently I just got back from doing a tour with Egypt for the MFO, Multiple Forces Organization of Observers. All that is I don't know if many of you remember Carter got the Egyptians and the Israelis to quit fighting. It's just a peace treaty. All we were there to do is keep the peace, make sure there's no violations of the treaty. Basically stayed in a vast wasteland, a mountainous wasteland called the Sinai. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. It's a mountainous regions area. Really, it's nothing. And all we were there for is to observe, make sure nobody broke the peace, made any violations of the treaty. We stayed in for 21 days. Stayed in little camps. You could probably put my camp in that middle of the circle there. I was literally out with, if you ever heard of BFE, that's where I was. Yeah, so,
You was pretty young then.
well, when I first joined the Army, I was 22. When I
Oh,
went
you
to-
were?
And when I went to the Desert Storm, Desert Shield, they didn't really do much there. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. They lost my paperwork, and I was kind of shoveled everywhere. But nothing really, well, as everybody knows, nothing really came out. Didn't see no action. Well, thank God for that. I mean, it's all right with me.
Yeah.
And when I went with Iraq, I did see a little action, but not much, which is still all right with me. I only got shot at here and there, but I think the only major operation we got into, we got tasked to Special Forces, and our job was to guard their little camps so they could carry out their operations. And what we call the Wahhabis, which was the bad guys. We had a unit leave, so they decided to check our defenses, and so they came and tried to shoot us up, but we fenced them back. No injuries. Well, except for me, I fell and twisted my ankle. No Purple Heart for that. So And that was pretty much it. Got shelled here and there, but like many wars, you kind of got used to it. Matter of fact, one guy, we did work at team houses too for special forces, and I got to stay at right outside what they call the green zone, right outside Baghdad. It was the Iraqis secretary to the Republican Guard Army. Got to stay at his house. He had a real nice house, nice and indoor pool and everything. We didn't have it too bad, to tell you the truth. And our job was just to basically guard the house, and like I said, special forces could carry out their operations. And yeah, you know, like I said, at the camp we were at, you know, get mortared here and there, but it was really no big deal. You used to tell it was a mortar or a rocket, you know. Wake up in the middle of the night, you hear a bang, okay, mortar, go back to sleep. Just, you know, as long as it was off in the distance and not near you, well, you know, my building wasn't on fire.
Yep.
You know, yeah, I didn't, you know, so, I had a real funny story. Anybody know Sam Crock?
Mhm. Yep.
Well, he just come back from the green zone, not knowing much about what we were doing at the camp at the time. Matter of fact, he was pulling guard duty in Tower 4, which is where we were staying at. And a rocket hit about 300 yards from us, hit a motor pool, destroyed some trucks. And he came down. I was asleep, of course. I heard the rocket, you know, okay, you know, went back to sleep because I had guard duty soon after that. He came down and he's like, well, everybody, oh, I'm known as Grubby, so everybody references me as Grubby. That's me. And he was like, you know, Grubs, you know, Grubby, you gotta wake up, you know, we just got, you know, I said, was the building on fire? No. Is anything damaged? No. Okay, goodbye, I'm going back to sleep. All right, and he just kind of freaked out a little bit because he was in a safe area for a while. And then he had come and now we're getting launched at. And I did some work, we got pulled out of there, we did work with 3rd Corps at Camp Slayer. Basically just bored to death, looking at nothing. Guard duty, trying to keep the kids away because the kids always want Pepsi or candy or, you know, at first it was kind of cute, then after a while it got annoying because they always want one bag or something. And well, that's pretty much it. Any questions from anybody?
So will you be going someplace again? Do you have
Well, I'm in for 3 more years, and
okay.
hopefully not. But the way it sounds, the Guards is rapidly deploying to the Horn of Africa.
Oh.
So like around Somalia, Djibouti, around that area. So it sounds like I know the 161 is going there, Guard unit here. I know they're going there. I have a feeling that's going to be our next mission.
That's
It's
where
going to
the
be that or
pirates,
Afghanistan.
is that where the pirates are, the Horn of Africa? there?
Yes, yeah. So that's, so far they got a lot of units going there. They asked me to go, but I just got back from Egypt and I don't think the general of the house would care too much for me leaving right away, you know, so I asked the commander-in-chief, she said no. So, you know, so that's what I told him, no, commander-in-chief spoke, you know, so I wasn't gonna volunteer anytime too soon, but I'm in for 3 more years. Yeah, whether I go somewhere from those 3 years, I don't know. And it's been 5 years from OIF to this mission in Egypt, which was quite interesting. Like I said, it was to keep the peace. Like I said, in the MFO, there was also other, there was Colombians, British, Canadians, Italians. And like I said, all that job was just to make sure they could keep the peace. No, we had to learn like all their military equipment, like their tanks, their airplanes. We had to recognize them all, their boats, make sure that nobody breaks it. Because Sousa, the main office for the MFO, why it's in Rome, I don't know. But they decided if you send a report up of what you thought was a violation, they decided either to downgrade it or it was a violation of the peace treaty. But it was more just sitting around twiddling your thumbs, watching movies, trying to stay out of trouble. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
Afternoon, Joe Toole, known as Joey. Um, I was in the United States Navy. I joined in '87. Myself and two others from the Blue Rapids community, we all three went together at the same time. I was I was on a ship on the West Coast, living in Japan for about 2 years when we first started with the Operation Desert Shield. That John referred to, there was Operation Desert Shield, and then it turned into Desert Storm. Desert Shield was just the preparing for what we're going to do when Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait to begin with. Being on a boat, you're not up real close and personal with it. After talking to Pat this morning, I'm like, what is there to talk about? Well, I thought, well, there's transit. The day that transitioned the most for me was, it was January 16th of 1991. That was the night. There was about 4 of us late at night standing on the back of the ship. Middle of the night. It's dark. We're running darkened ship, not a light on. We're standing out back here, and as we look up at and all you can see is a whole sky full of stars. There's nothing else, anywhere. And we see the twinkling stars. Then we realize there's another one right behind it, another one behind it. We get to counting them. We get up to about 100 of these twinkling stars all in a row going all the way across. And, that's 10, 11 o'clock at night. 2 o'clock in the morning, the captain come on the speakers and woke everybody up to let us know that we had just put in an aerial assault that sent in about 250 airplanes fully loaded with munitions. And within a week, just doing that for 2 days, within a week, Saddam Hussein had pulled all of his troops out, running as fast as they could back to Iraq. Thinking that, hey, we're all done with this. We were, at that time, positioned out to play gate guard, anybody coming in or out of the Persian Gulf. The closest we got to having any fear is when you wake up at 2 in the morning to the sound of, the alarms going off, because the ship that's 2 miles to our side that we're running, back and forth playing gate guard, they're the same size of ship, same type of ship. You just happen to be on one side of them, they're on the other side, and they attract a water mine. Then they're put to their alert, their general quarters, trying to more or less salvage your ship, because you either salvage it or you're going down. So, the only excitement that we seen or got a thing going on was I was on what we called the flying squad, not airplanes. What it was when you had a fire on board your own ship, they sound the alarm. There was a distinct amount of people that had their own responsibilities within that ship to go get, whether it's a fire or whether we hit a water mine or whether there was a rupture in the hull. You had certain people that were assigned jobs to make sure that the ship didn't sink. Of course, when the other ship hit the water mine, it was something that you prepare for, but you're never prepared for it.
Yeah.
We end up loading up a lot of our equipment on our small boat units, or on our smaller boats, the captain's gig, the motor whale boat. We load up equipment and we traverse the water for that 2 miles, because we don't want to get our ship too close to theirs, because these water mines actually have rather large magnets in them. The majority of mine sweeps in the United States Navy are made of wood and non-metallic or non-ferrous metals that will not attract them. Going over there and you see the devastation of, this explosion from underneath. It puts things into perspective. And of course, I'm remembering some of this as I'm reading letters this morning. I go get a shoebox my wife had kept, and you know, for the last 20 years. There was letters dated from about the 20th of December all the way up through April, and it was about every 3 days there was another letter. And you know, we were going through that, you know, just the thoughts of, I was reading about, you know, that I wrote her about the water mine and stuff like that. Things to forget about was when we went to general quarters, when we would go to, you know, our battle stations on the ship and you'd secure the hatches and stuff. This water mine hit the back of this other ship underneath in what is the rear steering room. That was my general quarter station on my ship. So, you know, it's one of them things that hit home. You know, nobody was actually down there when this water mine hit. But just the thought of, okay, now we have to go back to our ship, go to general quarters while they sweep the mine. And the only thing between me and that mine is a metal floor. The things I would say about, you know, my experiences, it was a real good experience. I came back to Blue Rapids when I got out of the Navy after 4 years. I come back in 1991. I was a month after I got out, I turned 22 years old. I had seen 13 different countries. I had been to places that there's people out of my class, out of my group growing up around here, that have never seen anything near that. It's an experience that you couldn't trade it.
No.
You wouldn't want to trade it. There was a lot of good times. There were sad times. You know, being overseas in Japan, lose a relative or two. Can't make it back for everything. You know, I would say to anybody that is coming up through the years now, if they debated on whether, you know, with all these wars we have going on, whether it would be in their best interest to, you know, sign up for one of the military branches. Yeah, I mean, even with what we have today technology-wise, it is a very good experience. It helps you grow in a lot of ways. But that's about all I have.
We saw a different Joey too, from graduating from high school when he came back.
We did. there was,
Yeah, you know, like you said, you grow up.
there was, you know, there was times where the, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about cuss like a sailor. There are situations there that, you know, I don't know if the Army's any different or the Air Force, but I know the Navy, there's things about being a sailor that, you know, once you get back, you gotta realize you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Who are the ones that went with you from Blue Rapids?
David Runnebaum was one of them, which is Joe and Gene Borders. It would be Gene Borders' the son, Joe's stepson. And the other one was Todd Lay. He just recently moved back to Waterville. David, he went in as a hull technician, like this flying squad I was explaining. He was a hull technician, so he would have been on one of them flying squads that if there was a problem with, you know, a breach in the hull, he would have figured out how to plug the hole. Todd Lay, Todd is not a dumb person by any means, but we were shocked when I ended up being a diesel mechanic. David ended up being a hull technician, and Todd Lay come out as a gas turbine systems technician electrical. He was the rocket scientist working on a jet engine. Cannot figure out how he ended up with that. We ended up, I mean, one of my options other than the diesel mechanic, they said I qualified for underwater demolition. I like explosives, but there was also a 2-year life expectancy once you actually, and I decided that I liked being here longer than 2 years, so we went with the diesel mechanic instead.
More questions? Thank you very much.
That's
Mr.
what hand me
Johnson.
that package back there on the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, talking about that language,
you know, when you come out of the Navy, your language isn't always the best. And I know that we started to college after right out of the service in '46, and some of the college professors learned a lot of new words from some of the veterans that come back. I'll tell you, it was a different situation. These guys have pretty exciting stories. Mine's not nearly exciting. I grew up in western Kansas and went to a country school. We had no telephones, no electricity, no running water. We didn't have any of this. And the war started, and I joined up in late 1944. I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, and through the prodding of some of the teachers, they suggested it'd probably be a pretty good place for me to go to the Navy. You don't have to ever repeat that. So anyway, I never finished high school, and I went into the Navy. I enlisted when I was 17 years of age, and a lot of my classmates went in at the start of their senior year, and then after the war, they went back and finished high school. And I went to Great Lakes in the middle of winter, up in Chicago for boot camp training, and that's a beautiful place to go in the winter time for boot camp training. We had firefighting a couple of days, and you'd have to scrape the ice off, and it just wasn't very pleasant. But anyway, got through that, and we had a leave, came home for a few days, and then they sent our whole group out to the West Coast. We went to Bremerton, Washington, and Tacoma, and we picked up an aircraft carrier out there. And it was it hadn't been commissioned yet, it was just being completed. In fact, we supplied it. And I have a picture. Might pass these around. This is a picture of the aircraft carrier that I was on. It's a CBE. It's a small aircraft carrier. It's the USS Morocco. And it was in right at the end of World War II. And then it was in the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And then it was scrapped and sent to Japan for scrap metal. But anyway, we went out there. We had to do the whole work, supply it, and after we finished, we went on a shakedown cruise for a number of days, and I was putting in the ordnance department. I was a gunner's mate, striker at that time. They called it gunner mate striker, and we practiced day in and day out on 40 millimeters, 5-inch guns, loading them till we got up to a certain speed. And we finally got our full complement, and we went out for a shakedown cruise, and we had 2 or 3 shakedown crews find out what was right, what was wrong with the ship, what we needed to do. We finally got it all prepared, and they sent us on our way to Japan. We were on our way to Japan. We were about halfway over there, joined, I don't know, the 8th Fleet or something, and for the invasion of Japan. And about halfway over, that's when they dropped the atomic bomb. And of course, that pretty well took care of things, so we were very happy about that. A lot of people, to this day, they think that was a tragedy. We dropped the atomic bomb and killed a lot of civilians over there. But you read the facts on what they thought the invasion of Japan would cost the American people and the Japanese people, it is in the millions. It might have still been fighting today, I don't know, because the Japs, as most of you know, they're something else when it came to guarding our homeland. And I don't know, well, we went over to, let's see, it was Christmas Day, I think we were in Manila, in Hong Kong, New Year's Day, and Manila Bay was, I don't know how many sunken ships were in the bay. I mean, there were just hundreds of sunken ships. The hulls were sticking up. And the town, Manila was pretty well bombed out.
Bet you've seen them.
We went back in 1960 to teach school for Navy dependent kids in the Philippines for a couple of years. And they had cleaned up the harbor, and it was just beautiful harbor at that time. But after the war, the town was bombed out, like Orville said, London. There was just not a whole lot left there. And while we were over there, we got to visit. And I think most of you are well acquainted with Corregidor and the Baton March. The younger kids, younger people in here may not be quite familiar. I'll pass these around. You can look. But this was Corregidor. This is right in the middle of Manila Harbor. And this is where the Americans held out till they finally couldn't go anymore, and that's where they surrendered. And this is the tunnel on Manila. It's Melinda Tunnel, and they had hospitals in there, and that's where the thousands of soldiers were at that particular time. And there's another picture of it. It's under a mountain, really, so they couldn't bomb it, but they couldn't go anywhere. This was a mile-long barracks. It was a mile long. That's where the sailors slept, and you can see what's left of it. It's completely bombed out. That's just a couple of shells. We got permission when we were teaching to go over there, and it had not been touched since the war. They were always going to make a memorial out of there, and I don't know if they've done anything yet or not, but in 1960, it was still just like it was after the war. There was piles of shells like this. There's one of the guns. I know you can't see it, but this is looking at the barrel of it. It's pretty good size. That's another picture of the barrel. There was one of the mortars they had over there. They had four of these, 4 quads, and there was 4 mortars in each one of them. And that's what they were protecting the harbor with. I'll pass these around. You can take a look at them, whatever. And so, anyway, then we went on up to, we visited Guam and Wake Island. And of course, they had just been secured, but there were still, they wouldn't let you go anywhere because there's still all kind of snipers up in the islands. And we were over there about a year. In fact, I was aboard the carrier exactly 1 year to a day. And we come back, and then practically all the old timers, they got discharged. There was all of us young guys still aboard ship, and we had a lot of sailors that been shipwrecked, been aboard ship, and we had a diversity of people on it. I ended up as gunner's mate 3rd class, and that's where I finished my naval career. So I'm like Joey. I enjoyed it. I know a lot of them went in. They had to, like Orville, he went through a lot of hard times. But I went in. I had a nice trip. I got to see the world, and I got experiences that I never had. I got 4 years of college out of it, and otherwise I'd have probably been out in western Kansas farming or in the poorhouse by now. So, my folks farmed out there for years, and you know, Dad said, when I die, get rid of this place that I couldn't make a living off of it, and you can't either. So that's what we did. As soon as they passed away, we sold it.
So why did you and Louise decide to go back over and teach?
Well, we had a superintendent, and he went over there to teach school, and then he asked us if we would like to come over in his school and teach.
Okay.
So my wife taught in the elementary school, I taught in the high school, and we taught Navy dependent kids over there for 2 years, and that's kind of a different story too. They were different. I started out American history class, and when I finished the year, I didn't have the same bunch of kids I started with. I mean, they were coming and going all the time. And they were coming from the East Coast, the West Coast, all over the country. They were all out of different books. They were studying different parts of it, so you know it was rather difficult. After I got out in the last few years, I started collecting old military buttons.
Oh,
Is it upside down? Yep. And anyway, I thought you might enjoy looking at some. Some of these, my dad was in World War I, and I had an uncle in World War I. A couple of these buttons are the old ones that they had on their uniforms. And so anyway, if any of you'd like to look at it, you're welcome to take a look at it. They're just some I collected of different things. So outside of that, anybody, yeah.
You know, on that aircraft carrier, what kind of planes landed and took off on it?
We had Wildcats and Hellcats and F-4Us.
How long, you remember how long it was? A deck?
The one we were on was only about 700 feet long.
That's pretty long.
Yeah, it's a big ship, there's no doubt about it, but it's nothing like the large carriers.
Oh, no, I had those back here.
We had one, I was in charge, or I wasn't in charge, but I was one of the groups in charge of, we had one 5-inch, and that's the fantail of the ship.
5-inch 54?
Yeah. 5-inch 54, no, it's a 5-inch 38.
Okay.
That makes a difference, I don't know. Then we had two quad 40s, and then we had a bank of 20 millimeters. I got on the 20 millimeters one day to take, we did a lot of practice shooting, and if you've never, a 20 millimeter, they strap you in and you had a lever and you pulled. When you pulled that sucker, it took off. It was automatic. It just kind of swept the sky. If everything had been up there, I wouldn't have come within 2 miles of it. So it takes a while. But the 5-inch, it had a range of about 8 or 9 miles. And of course, the 40 millimeters, they had different fuses on them. Some of them would go off at a certain height, and some of them you could set, and one thing and another. So, but anyway, that's about it.
Anybody with
I
questions?
thought maybe we'd start out the day by singing bell-bottom trousers. But Joy, would you?
I'm
lead?
out.
Okay, thank you very much.
We thank you very much, panel. I know I didn't give you very much guidance and you came through like the troopers you are, so we appreciate that a lot. Wish we could have had 100 people turn out for you, but it doesn't always work that way for us, but they're lost. We do have Alice King is going to show some videos that she has that those of you that have been in her class probably have seen before, but the rest of us have not, about Iwo Jima and the making of that statue and so on and so forth. And do we know when that's scheduled? We're checking our calendar.
24th of October.
24th of October, so kind of watch for that. We contemplated having other speakers on different nights, haven't made it happen yet, but watch for our publicity because we might arrange for some more things. We're leading up to our military display, which will be put up on the 12th of October. The OCTA, the Oregon Trail people, are having a big doings in Marysville next weekend, and so they're supposed to stop here, and we didn't want to be in a mess because it takes us a while to get rid of the stuff we'd borrowed and then talk to other people into bringing things in for the military exhibit, and we didn't want to be in that switch when we had company, you know. And so anytime that week of the 12th, we'll be down here working quite a bit, and if you don't see cars, call. We'll all come down. If you've got some items of military interest to show, and we would like to borrow those for 90 days and put those in as a tribute. I'm also working to get pictures of everybody from Blue Rapids that's been in the service, whether you were in fighting hard as Orville was or not fighting quite so hard. If you've been in the service, I would like to make a collection of your photos And we've got, I need to make some samples. In our newsletter was the page that showed the information that we'd like to have accompany each one of those photos. And there's some that Nancy has, so if you didn't get it by email and you want to check on that, why do? If you want a hard copy to look at, take home, why take that? We just invested in some new postcards and they're right here. They're going to be for sale for $1 a piece. They're relative to the Oregon Trail. We are going to be making more postcards because we have thousands of pictures in our possession of Old Time Blue Rapids, the mine, many, many, many things. Almost nude strangers. That's my personal favorite. But anyway, we'll be making more photographs, more postcards, but these are kind of our first run on the Oregon Trail, so if you're interested in those, why they're up here too. Nancy, what did I forget?
I have newsletters here if anybody didn't get one.
Okay.